Welcome to Detours, Understanding Acquired Brain Injury. And we have with us Kim, who is one of our hosts. She focuses on concussions, whiplash kind of injuries, things like that, as she has personal experience and is interested in helping people with it and just talking about it. So I just want to introduce her, let her talk about something that happened with her. She's been absent for a little bit, and she's going to not only talk about why, but we're going to talk about subject related to it, and we'll get into kind of details. Okay.
So today we're going to talk about a hot topic, really kind of for everybody, but in my case, definitely in the case of head injury. Um, uh, we want to talk about first and foremost the suicide hotline. So if there's anybody ever feeling the way that I felt, that you can get the help you need quickly. Um, the suicide hotline is now just three numbers. It's 988. You can text it, call it, or you can chat with the suicide hotline. So if you're ever feeling any kind of way that you feel you can't get out of, there are people that care. They really are. So let's start with that. Um, so what happened was I was experiencing some mania. I was getting very depressed. I was actually following a small bump on the head. It actually started off kind of playful. I was playing with my puppy, and he jumped up in my face. I went back and I hit my head on the back of a stone table. That's kind of what ripped open the band-aid for me. I wasn't really experiencing that because I've been in therapy, regular therapy for almost the entire time that I've had the head injury, because I knew right away that, I was having those feelings about 3 months in, that I was, having thoughts of suicide, because things were just so very different from prior to the head injury. It was it's been quite the adjustment, and for 2 years I've been focusing on, you know, staying away from, those suicidal thoughts if at all possible, and how to work through them. So even with all that work, that little bump on the head tore that band-aid open, and it felt like all the hurt, frustration, all the oh new hmm, I guess it would be best described as, trying to adjust to new abilities, a new situation, or a lack of thereof of ability, and having to accept those, which is quite hard. Just in itself is, accepting the injury itself, accepting the changes that have come to your life, frustration with family, friends, doctors, your new challenges, all the hurt, feeling inadequate. So, and it can happen to anybody. So do not be ashamed to reach out for help. If you are reaching out for help, you are stronger than you know. Um, uh, do not put any kind of guilt on yourself for seeking help, because if you are seeking help, there's a reason. Don't let anybody tell you that you're being dramatic or nothing like that. If you need help, you need help, and you reach out to get that kind of help you need, because they really will. They're there to lift you back up and get you back on the right path. And honestly, they don't just help people that are feeling that kind of way. They help people with substance abuse, things like that. So, not that we're going to go into that today, but something to keep in mind. So they do help everybody. Um, I um, I was caught in a spiral. I don't normally cry, um, and I was crying for days on end. I stopped temperature regulating. started getting really manic, and even to the point that I deleted my entire phone. I've never wanted to delete my entire phone ever, and I wanted to wipe it out. And so it was just very out of character, and I could feel it. I could feel that something was very, very wrong. And I reached out to multiple people, my therapist, my neurologist. I reached out to Mark, and I confided in my boyfriend. And the consensus was, you need to go to the hospital. You need to go to the hospital. And I'm so glad that I took that advice, and I did, because I could not get myself out of that cycle of thought. It was just like nothing that I had learned in the 2 years that I've been in therapy was helping. It just wasn't. And um, honestly, learning what your warning signs are really kind of pivotal in like going forward, as far as you want to recognize those. That way you can start applying some coping skills to them, start applying coping skills. And that way, you know, hopefully you can reach your therapist. And if you cannot, definitely dial 988. Um, all in all, it was a positive experience. Not to say there wasn't any negatives, because there were. I'm not going to discuss them today, because they really were kind of personal, personal situations that will be handled by those people's bosses. so, so, and I wouldn't expect for everybody to have, these particular experiences. So I think it was just a staff situation where I was. So it's not, all in all, the positive groups, getting into those groups, and all of us sitting around talking and having that commonality of, you know what, we're all broken. We're all broken right now, but we were strong enough to make it here and to get help. Whether we were broken, down from my case, head injury, or if somebody else, another challenge that they had in their life, having that commonality and being able to talk to each other, just like I do in support groups for the head injury. While that is great, and I definitely would never, ever, ever say not to do that, but if having the groups where it's not just head injury, and just kind of seeing that we all have challenges, and I think that really kind of puts things into perspective. Now, granted, my challenges are not going to be the same as their challenges, but the fact that our challenges have built up to the point that we can no longer sustain beneath them, that right there brought us together. And I saw more patients helping patients than I had ever thought that I would see. It was really beautiful to see all the patients helping other patients. And that really is my fulfillment, is helping others. It really just swells my heart to help other people if I can. So going in there and watching, even myself start here, and then watching, it's almost like watching them water plants and seeing them withered plants, and watching them stand straight and tall again. And that was a beautiful thing for me to watch. And it really helped me to get through the whole experience, along with those positive groups. Uh, but just to kind of let you know what to expect, if you do seek help, um, go ahead and prepare you a bag. You're going to want clothes that do not have strings, no strings, shoes that do not have strings. Um, I was not allowed to carry my cane. They gave me a walker instead. Um, that was not ideal. uh, but it got the job done. And so I was grateful for that. So gratitude in those moments is very important. Um, I spent 2 days at the local hospital, um, I guess being observed, while we got a transfer to the mental hospital, which, uh, I joke around and say it's the mental health retreat. Because really, I mean, even though it wasn't a retreat or a vacation, um, to me, that's just a better way of looking at it. It's a more positive way of looking at the experience, all in all. But after the 2 days in the hospital, I went to the mental health retreat. And at the mental health retreat, they kept me 7 days. And Friday to Friday, which Sundays don't count, so they only count 6 days. So there's that, but kind of expect that time frame. They can keep you up to 10 days in a short-term facility like that. So they did not take me to maximum or anything like that, but yeah, it's well worth getting out of that spiral. So if you find yourself caught in a spiral, definitely reach out for help, because if you do not seek help, the truth is that unfortunately your family will likely be planning your funeral. Um, and that is an incredibly sad situation for everyone involved, because there are people that love you. They just, a lot of times they have a hard time knowing how. And and sometimes it just helps to sit and talk about those things, and even seek therapy with those individuals afterward. Um, but definitely seek out that 988 mental health crisis, or go to your local hospital, because they're there to help.
Excuse me. Yeah, I also want to mention something I think is really important in the context of this. It does not cause suicide. If you ask a person if they're feeling like, and don't be afraid to say, kill yourself. Ask if they have plans to kill themselves. And if they have a plan,
Yeah.
that's a 911 kind of situation. Do not hesitate to call 911. Okay. It's very important to know that. Um, I myself have had suicidal thoughts. I myself had, um, and highly lethal. But it's a complicated thing, as most things are with brain injury. We are eight times more likely to become depressed, and 6 times more likely to have problems with anxiety. Um, and it doesn't always look like you would expect. Part of it is because it isn't simply feeling sad about something, and depression is not just sadness. All right, it is clear. It is necessary to make that clear. Depression is not simply sadness, and depression alone is not the only reason why somebody may commit suicide. They may have psychotic symptoms. They may not be in touch with reality, although it's not as common as depression to cause it. It is possible. They may believe they can fly and wish to demonstrate that by jumping off a bridge or building. They may believe that they are a god and can ascend or something like that. So please be aware there are other reasons why. So any kind of radical change in behavior, um, something like that, mania, people may, again, same kind of reasoning, or believe they're being spied on and try to get the transmitter out of their head or something like that. So please be aware. I do want to throw that one in there. But as far as the depression, things like that, chemical imbalance and destruction of neurons. So not secreting enough of the serotonin, the dopamine, and knocking out a balanced gamma-aminobutyric acid neurotransmitters. We don't have as many neurons as we used to have. So it's easy for us to get out of balance. And the purpose of a short stay unit, of being inpatient at a short stay unit, is to help us get our chemistry back in order, to help us get back. It's not about happy pills. It's not about making you feel happy or any of that. That is a work of a lifetime, to find, to find what makes you happy, feel good. And that is cognitive and behavioral therapy. That is learning new ways of thinking and things like that. That's therapy. That is a long project, rediscovering yourself after brain injury, finding out who you are again. That's existential work. And that is certainly part of where depression comes from. I mean, you spent a long time building yourself and then suddenly have that destroyed. And many people talk about, like, the death of who they were, things like that. I've even used that term occasionally. And that may be a sign that they're headed in a difficult direction. Doesn't mean they're suicidal, but it certainly may mean maybe you need to talk to them again and be honest with them. Don't be abusive. Putting somebody down is not a way to make them feel better. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. It doesn't work that way. Many people with traumatic brain injury have issues of neurochemistry. And that's like telling a blind person, see here, or say, don't you see that? No, they don't. And people with depression, you can talk to them till you're blue in the face. You can tell them you love them. You can hug, whatever. Their chemistry is messed up. That's not going to fix them. And guilt tripping them and telling them things like that, that's not going to fix the brain. This is a brain problem. This is a neuro problem. This is why they need to go inpatient. They need to either have medication, their meds adjusted, or some other somatic treatment. And yes, cognitive and group therapy help, because those of you who saw my video about where I'm talking about the brain being a wet, squishy analog computer, know it's like cognitive therapy is like rehab, is rehabilitation. I'm not talking about, talking about is reprogramming this computer, but relearning those skills takes a long time, and months, even years in some cases, or decades. And medication takes this and makes it stable. That is the purpose of medication. Despite the jokes about happy pills and things, that's not the purpose. Medication is to help make you stable, is to bring those levels into stability. And manic depressive patients, people with bipolar 1 and 2, your goal is to bring their chemistry stable. And the same thing with depression. It is, again, to bring your neurotransmitters and bring your state stable. And that is what the short stay psych hospital is about, helping you find stability, get you back on your feet. And that's then where therapy comes in, is to help not only this, but then to hopefully help you look at and think different ways of thinking and looking at life situations. But that takes practice, and it takes a long time. And if a person is at risk, you cannot tell them, oh, we'll get to you in a few months. We'll help you like change your ways of thinking over 10 years. The hospital is for stabilization. It's like a heart attack patient. Gee, well, why don't you change your diet? Why don't you start exercise and walking? They'll be dead by the time they can do that. It is like any other disease, and people with brain injury are much more susceptible to psychiatric and other illnesses, I might add. The purpose is to make them stable. That is why you go into the hospital. For me, in the early days, I tried twice. I was saved because I had considered highly lethal physical methods, no pills, anything like that. And I was rescued twice. I don't want to get into details, so I don't want to give anyone ideas, but let's say it wasn't pills. It was very, very lethal methods if I had been successful. If I had not been found, so I always regard that somewhat miraculous. But the truth is, it's like divine intervention. I don't know, you can call it whatever you'd like, but I was rescued, and it a long time for me to get my head back. And I spent some time in the hospital, and it helped a lot. But you still have to keep an eye on things. And those of us with brain injury, it's like, I didn't have these problems before. This is because my brain has changed. And brain produces personality. It's not like there's a separate thing out here that controls you. Brain is you. Your operating system runs on a computer. Your personality runs on your brain. You are emergent from your brain. Damage the brain, change the personality. This is why Alzheimer's disease, Pick's disease, all these other dementias change who the person is. This is why brain injury, traumatic brain injury, acquired brain injury changes who we are. It's a brain problem.
It's like the crumpled paper explanation where you take a perfectly pristine piece of paper, crumple it up, step on it a couple times, and then after that you try to make it back flat, and it's never really going to be back flat. It's never the same.
Oh, no.
So yeah, so like a rippling effect.
Yes, and this also applies to psychiatric disorders as well, because if you think about the purpose of learning and teaching, it is to affect a change in your brain. When you learn things, there are literally physical changes in your brain. So if you have a lifetime of emotional abuse, it will change the connections, and neurons that fire together wire together, is the saying in neurology. And so if you're raised in an environment that is not supportive, it literally changes the connections, and other connections that could potentially be made are not made because they're pruned away. So how you raise your kids is important because it makes physical changes in the brain. This is why abuse and emotional and physical matter. You literally change that person's brain. You are reprogramming a kid if you are abusive. There are physical changes in the brain. Rehabilitation leads to physical changes in the brain. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Learning makes physical changes in the brain. Dreams, REM state, and REM state is a process of causing thoughts to become physical changes in the brain. Is programming. This is why oftentimes dreams contain stuff that you sort of remember during the day, because it is consolidation of long-term memory to physical change. Neurons that fire together, wire together. What you do to somebody, how you handle, treat them emotionally, causes physical changes in the brain, as well as trauma, things like that. Crumpled paper analogy is accurate for both psychiatric disorders as well as neurological, because you are making physiological changes in the brain.
Yeah, it's like you're setting off a child's trajectory in life with the abuse. Like you said. Yeah.
We are our brains.
Mm-hmm. The more I learn about the brain, it's insane. It's insane.
It's programming. It is literal physical changes. It's programming. You are programming that computer, that organic computer. And we in the West need to stop trying to separate the two, because we're so afraid of death. We're so afraid of meaninglessness, these existential fears. We've got to overcome that.
Right.
We've got to take responsibility for our actions.
Yeah. And we need to live for today.
Yes.
Not promised tomorrow. And I know that it's almost a somber look at things, but it helps me to be grateful. So having gratitude for what I do have left.
Yes.
How I'm able to still learn.
Live for today, love for today.
Right. And if you're having trouble, don't forget 988 and reach out to your doctors. Reach out, because hey, I promise you, we care.
Yes.
They care. You're going to find people that care and that want to help and want to water you.
Yes.
They want to water you. They want to see you go from wither to back, beautiful, standing straight and holding your own. And if that includes medication, that includes medication. If it includes continued therapy, then so be it.
Medication is not to get you to control you, it's to make you stable. And work with your doctors. Tell them if you're having problems. It takes a long time because it takes time for your neurons to adjust to, because the medications to adjust those levels also requires the neurons to up and down regulate the number of receptors, which receive, and as the medications kick loose neurotransmitters. That's what they're for. Or they block the reabsorption of neurotransmitters so the levels go up. But it takes time for the neurons to change number of receptors so they're more sensitive to more of that neurotransmitter, of serotonin, of GABA, of dopamine. And so it takes time for the neurons to adjust. That's why it's like 4 to 6 weeks, because it takes time for the cells to adjust to the changes. That's why it takes time. And that's also why with you in the hospital, they want to, it takes a little time. I have to stay there. Plus, you also have to learn, like the group therapy where you help each other out and understand quick strategies that can help you during a time of crisis. So, any recommendations for symptoms that loved ones should look for that are signs of?
Honestly, if your loved one is acting any way that they normally would not, that's number one. Number two, crying, that is kind of obvious, but at the same time, if they are crying and even if you're able to console them in that moment and then you see them having a crying fit later, that was how my boyfriend knew. I don't ever cry. I have some unresolved trauma around that. So that's why I don't do that typically. So he knew right away something was off. Um, if they're acting out of sorts like I was and just upset over anything and everything,
Yeah.
and um, the like where I deleted my phone, where I was so just caught up in it that I was like, I want it all gone. I want to start over fresh. And even in the process, I frustrated myself because I ended up rebooting it halfway. Like, I don't know. It was very frustrating. It made it worse. But him seeing my additional frustration with these little things and even problems that I was creating myself. And
Yeah.
yeah, if you see
Angry,
those,
irritable,
yeah, being angry,
beyond normal.
yeah, yes, talk with them about like Mark said, be frank. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Do you have a plan? Because that is important, because there's thinking about it and then there's planning on doing it. And
Giving
yeah,
stuff away. There's one. A sudden burst of energy. If they
mhm,
suddenly go from being down to suddenly energetic, and usually that is a warning sign, a big one, because it means they finally committed to a decision. Many people are like, that doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. It means they finally made a decision. I'm going to do it. That's called crisis right away. That's called 911 kind of stuff. If
mhm,
they've suddenly gone from to, that's a warning sign.
mhm,
And again, that having made a plan, that is 911. That goes beyond hotline crisis. That's called the
mhm.
paramedics. Um, if
And
they're
even
if they're
oh,
vegetative in a dark room, dark spaces all the time, if they don't want to eat, if they don't, those are called vegetative symptoms. Like if they're low, it looks like they're sick or something, but they're not physically ill. If they have no drive, no desire, again, it's change. If you've watched them deteriorate over time, if they seem to have no willpower drive beyond the usual, those of us with brain injury know about adynamia, but this goes like beyond that. And it can be also a warning sign for dementia, pseudo depression, they call it, lack of drive, lack of will. So this is also a red flag. Contact your physician. If you have any doubts about any of these, don't hesitate to call the doctor. If you're worried about your loved one or you're worried about yourself, don't hesitate to call the doctor for some guidance.
right, because truly, there's no shame. Don't put that guilt on yourself. That is very important.
Or a loved
Uh,
one. This is a
Yeah,
brain
all of
process.
right. Exactly. So, yeah, just if you see somebody in this situation, be compassionate, be willing to help pack that bag. Anything that you can do to help in that moment, it really speaks to them. I mean, it's practically screaming at them that you care, truly. And even if they are, resistant to the situation and resistant to getting help, still let them know you care and that you're there to help and stay there to monitor. Let them know that you care, because they will come around to getting help, because truly the we want to live.
Yes.
We
No
want
matter
to
what
live.
they say, they want to live. Um, that also might mean like why are seeking help? Put away things that are potentially dangerous. Medications, certain meds are very dangerous. And sharp objects, guns, yeah, no. The number one cause of successful suicides, weapons in the house. If you know you've got somebody with brain injury, perhaps consider moving them away from, not in the house, somewhere else. Just saying for protection, because people with brain injury are impulsive. A short-term temporary problem becomes permanent. So
Yeah.
maybe you want to rethink a weapon in the house because maybe they're angry, sad, and impulsive, and maybe decide a permanent solution for a very temporary problem or something that can be taken care of. Just suggesting that. And those of us with brain injury, perhaps, yes. Are there other ways? Sure, but you don't want to hand them and then feel guilty for the rest of your days because just a suggestion. I'm not, it's like it's not meant to make this political or anything, but I am saying consider that people with brain injury are very impulsive, many of them, especially those with frontal lobe injuries. They're planning and thinking ahead skills, especially early on within the first couple of years. Just suggesting. And if they have active dementia, again, certain forms of dementia leave you more impulsive and make decisions really without the ability to think. And many people with TBI lack insight that they have a problem. And they'll tell you, no, I'm fine, even if they aren't. Anosognosia is,
Masking. Right. Masking. Man. And I did 2 years. I just put on, this is the
yeah,
mask.
yep. And there are
Hmm.
other people who
And
just
so,
don't know they have a problem outright. Literally, their brain tells them you're fine. I have a video about lack of self-awareness, even though they're not fine. Remember
right.
the F word? But yeah,
Yep.
masking is faking it and being aware you're faking it. Anosognosia is not being aware. So beware. But masking, yeah, you need to ask questions. Somebody who seems happy and positive all the time and they have a brain injury or something else, ask. Don't be rude about it. Please just ask. And especially if you have a close relationship with them, and look for signs that they may not be. A lot of like isolation, hiding in the room, or like,
Well, on
you
top
know,
of on top of asking, say they say, "Oh no, I'm fine. It's okay. Everything's good." So if they say that, that's fine. But you let them know, "Hey, I want you to know that if you were to feel like that I'm a safe person to come to.
mhm,
That
yes,
no judgment here,
right.
and that." So and hey, if you felt that way, let them know.
No,
I have.
that I've been in that position too. I mean, I have, and so I let people know, hey, look, it's not unusual. It's okay. Come to me.
Mhm. Let them know you're a safe person.
Right.
So, because honestly, because when the literal who hits the fan, they're going to be thinking about who really does care, and they're going to reach out to you and get that help.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is just call like 988 for them, call 911 if it's a crisis, and advise them, like, I'm there for you. I really think you need to go to the hospital. And that's okay too, to tell them to go to the hospital, because sometimes that's where they need to go. Telling them to tough it out at home or something, no. Or at
No.
the very least, contact their physician right
Right.
away, right away.
Right. Because the sooner you get those coping skills in place,
Mhm.
the better. Because that's what is really going to save us long term, is getting those coping skills. And unfortunately, even in my case, where I'd been in therapy for 2 years, seeing regular therapists weekly or bi-weekly, and still I did not have enough coping skills to keep me out of the hospital in this case. So do go to the hospital if you need it. If you need
Mhm.
it, trust me, you're gonna know.
Yeah.
You're gonna know. You're Yeah,
If you have awareness. Now, those who lack that self-awareness, you may have to make a call for them and
that's
let
true.
the EMS or emergency department personnel make the choice if necessary, because, somebody may not be able to do self-care at all. They may be, like, not. In that cases, you just call 911, let the medics and the doctor make the decision. And sometimes that happens too as a symptom. That's often a symptom of other things as well. But I think that covers pretty well. Um,
Yeah.
like, remember, 988 is where you go. There are support groups out there for, for not only brain injury, but people with psychiatric and emotional struggles. And remember, it's a brain disease. It is not a character flaw. It is not a personal failure or any of these things. We are our brains. You break it, you're going to find changes. These are things many of us never had before, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Okay. All right. So I'm going to say we're almost out of time here. So I'm going to say, it's like, please share, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon below, and we'll see you around again. And thank you so much for everything, Kim. Appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Mark, for having me again.
Please, comments below, and anything else you want to know from Kim or from me. Bye.